The soft hum of the Galactic Inspection Corps office filled the air as James Miller stared at his terminal screen. His coffee had gone cold, forgotten during the last 3 hours of routine paperwork. The clock showed 16:30 Earth Standard Time, and he was looking forward to ending another mundane day. That's when everything changed. The emergency transmission light flashed red, casting an eerie glow across his desk. Miller sat up straight, his years of training kicking in as he accepted the incoming message. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 eyes and crystalline patterns across its face. "This is Commander Blue of the stellar ship Daybreak." The alien spoke in perfect universal standard. "I request immediate inspection of my vessel by Inspector James Miller. This is urgent." Miller blinked in surprise. Alien commanders rarely requested specific inspectors, let alone knew their names. He pressed the response button. "Commander, this is Inspector Miller. May I ask the nature of your emergency?" The alien's 4 eyes blinked in an unsettling pattern. "That information is sensitive. What I can say is that it must be a human inspector. It must be you, Inspector Miller. Your reputation precedes you." Before Miller could respond, his office door slid open. Director Thompson walked in, his gray uniform pristine as always. "Miller, my office." Now, inside the director's office, the walls displayed various achievements and certificates from a 30-year career in the Corps. Thompson sat behind his desk, fingers drumming against the polished surface. "This is irregular," Thompson said, reviewing the transmission data. "The Daybreak is one of the most advanced ships in the Allied sectors. Commander Blue has an impeccable record. Why would they specifically request a human inspector?" Miller shrugged. "Unknown, sir, but their distress signal is genuine. That's what worries me." Thompson leaned back in his chair. "In 15 years of service, I've never seen an alien commander specifically request a human inspector. They usually prefer their own kind." The room fell silent as both men considered the implications. The emergency light continued to pulse, a reminder that time was ticking. "Sir," Miller spoke up, "whatever their reason, they need help. That's what the Corps is for." Thompson nodded slowly. "Very well. Take the rapid response shuttle. But Miller," he paused, his expression grave, "keep your emergency beacon active at all times. Something about this doesn't feel right." Within 30 minutes, Miller was aboard his inspection shuttle, breaking orbit from the Corps station. The Daybreak waited at the designated coordinates, its massive form growing larger in his viewport. The ship was beautiful, its silver hull adorned with flowing lines that seemed to capture and reflect starlight in impossible ways. As Miller guided his shuttle toward the designated docking port, he noticed something odd. The usual bustling activity around a ship this size was absent. No maintenance drones, no supply vessels, nothing. The Daybreak hung in space like a ghost ship. His shuttle's computer chimed as it received docking instructions. Miller ran through his pre-boarding checklist, making sure his inspection kit was complete. Standard tools, scanning devices, and the usual paperwork tablets. He added an extra emergency beacon to his belt, heeding Thompson's warning. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk. Miller took a deep breath, straightening his dark blue inspector's uniform. Whatever waited aboard the Daybreak, he would face it with the professionalism the Corps demanded. As the airlock cycled, Miller couldn't shake the feeling that this inspection would be anything but routine. Commander Blue's urgent request, the empty space around the ship, the insistence on a human inspector, it all pointed to something unprecedented. The airlock doors slid open with a soft hiss. "Welcome aboard, Inspector Miller." Commander Blue's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We have a situation that only a human can help us with." Miller stepped through the airlock, his boots touching the Daybreak's deck. As the door closed behind him, He couldn't help but wonder if he had just walked into something much bigger than a simple inspection. The corridors of the daybreak stretched before Miller like polished ribbons of silver and light. His footsteps echoed strangely in the emptiness, accompanied only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. Something was off about that sound, a slight irregularity that his experienced ears couldn't quite place. Two alien crew members appeared around a corner, their crystalline skin patterns glowing faintly in the ship's lighting. They stopped abruptly upon seeing Miller, pressing themselves against the wall to let him pass. Their four eyes widened, and their skin patterns flickered rapidly, a sign of strong emotion in their species. The human inspector, one whispered to the other in Universal Standard, probably not realizing Miller could hear them. Commander Blue was right. You can smell it. Miller pretended not to notice their strange behavior or comment, but his mind raced. Smell what? He'd showered that morning and wore the standard-issue deodorant required for cross-species interactions. The ship's main control center doors parted with a whisper, revealing a circular room filled with advanced technology that would make Earth's best engineers weep with envy. Commander Blue stood at the center, towering nearly 8 feet tall, skin patterns shifting between deep blue and silver. Inspector Miller. Blue's voice carried a note of barely contained relief. Thank you for coming so quickly. The commander's four eyes blinked in rapid succession. Another sign of stress. Miller pulled out his inspection tablet, trying to maintain normal protocols. I'll need to see your ship's maintenance logs first, Commander. Standard procedure. Of course, of course. Blue waved a long-fingered hand at a nearby console. Everything is there. But Inspector, there's something else. Before Blue could continue, Miller's handheld scanner began beeping. He frowned at the readings. Commander, I'm picking up unusual energy fluctuations throughout the ship. They don't match any known pattern in our database. The alien crew members in the control center exchanged worried looks. One of them, wearing what appeared to be an engineering uniform, stepped forward. We've been tracking those fluctuations for the past 3 days. They're getting stronger. Miller walked to a nearby wall, holding his scanner close. The readings spiked. These energy patterns, they're almost organic in nature. He turned to face Blue. Commander, what exactly is happening on your ship? Blue's skin patterns darkened to a deep midnight color. Follow me, Inspector. There's something you need to see, something we've been trying to handle ourselves. But the commander's voice trailed off. They left the control center, walking deeper into the ship. Miller noticed the crew grew thinner in these sections, and those they did pass seemed to watch him with a mixture of hope and fear. His training told him to be ready for anything, but nothing had prepared him for what he saw next. Blue led him to a sealed laboratory section. Through the transparent walls, Miller could see equipment that appeared to be malfunctioning, giving off sparks of strange, purple energy. But what caught his attention was the way the metal surfaces seemed to ripple, as if something microscopic was moving across them. This is spreading, Blue said quietly, and Inspector Miller, you, or rather, humans in general, are our only hope of stopping it. Miller took a step closer to the transparent wall, fascinated despite his growing concern. Why humans? Your technology is far more advanced than ours. Sometimes, Blue replied, skin patterns swirling with anxiety. The most advanced solution isn't the right one. We've known about humans for longer than you've known about us. We've studied you, learned about you. And there's something unique about your species, something we desperately need right now. The commander touched a control panel, and the laboratory's readings appeared on a nearby screen. The data showed something impossible, microscopic entities that seemed to exist halfway between energy and matter. What exactly am I looking at, Commander? Blue's four eyes fixed on Miller with an intensity that made him want to step back. The end of everything we've built, Inspector, unless you can help us. Unless humans can help us. Another alarm began to sound somewhere deep in the ship, and Miller knew his routine inspection had just become something far more important. Commander Blue pressed their palm against the laboratory's security panel, and the sealed door slid open with a soft hiss. The air inside carried a faint metallic tang that made Miller's nose twitch. "Watch," Blue said, picking up what looked like a simple metal cube. As they held it, tiny ripples moved across its surface, like raindrops on a pond. These parasites are energy-based life forms. They consume technology, break down metal, and corrupt computer systems. Our most advanced defenses mean nothing to them. Miller leaned closer, fascinated despite the danger. Through his scanner, he could see the parasites more clearly, microscopic swirls of purple energy that moved with frightening intelligence. How did they get aboard? "We believe they were dormant in an ancient artifact we recovered from a dead world." Blue's skin patterns shifted to a deep, troubled gray. "We thought we were being careful, following all quarantine protocols. But 3 days ago, they became active. Since then," the commander gestured at the failing equipment around them. A sudden spark from a nearby console made Miller jump back. The metal surface where the spark had originated was now covered in those same rippling patterns. "They're spreading faster," one of the ship's scientists spoke up. Their name was Green, and their hands shook as they worked at a still-functioning terminal. "But Inspector, watch this." Green picked up another infected piece of equipment and brought it close to Miller. The ripples on its surface suddenly retreated, moving away from his presence. "They don't like you," Blue said, 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "Or rather, they don't like something about human biology. We discovered it by accident when we tried to trade with a human ship last year. Their engineer came aboard for routine maintenance, and we noticed the parasites avoided areas where she had worked." Miller's mind raced with the implications. "Why didn't you report this to the Galactic Council?" Blue's skin patterns flickered with embarrassment. Pride. Fear. These parasites. They're not natural. They're too perfect, too destructive. We believe they're an ancient bioweapon designed to target advanced civilizations. If word got out that we'd accidentally released them, your people would lose standing in the galactic community," Miller finished. He understood now why they'd been so secretive. A loud alarm blared through the ship, and the lights flickered ominously. Green rushed to check the readings. "Commander, they've reached the main power core." "How long?" Blue demanded. "Hours, maybe less, once they corrupt the core's containment fields." Miller didn't need them to finish that sentence. A containment breach in a power core this size would do more than just destroy the ship. "Tell me everything you know about their reaction to humans. Don't leave anything out." Blue moved quickly to another terminal, pulling up research data. "They retreat from human proximity. The effect is strongest when humans are." "What's your word?" "Sweating. We tried to synthesize human sweat compounds, but artificial versions had no effect. There's something about actual human biology they don't like." Green added, "Something we can't replicate." Miller watched the rippling patterns on a nearby wall grow larger. Time was running out. He thought about the whispered comments from the crew earlier, about being able to smell them, about the parasites retreating from human contact. "Commander," he said slowly, an idea forming. "Your people have better sensors than ours. Can you analyze exactly what compound in human biology affects these things? Not just sweat, but everything we produce naturally." Blue's skin patterns shifted to a lighter shade. "Hope," Miller realized. Yes, we can." Green, begin a full spectrum analysis of Inspector Miller. Every compound, every hormone, every biological marker. As Green worked, Miller watched the parasites' movement on the walls. They were organized, moving with purpose. This was no ordinary infection. Something this perfectly designed to destroy advanced technology had to have a weakness, and somehow human biology was the key. He just hoped they could figure it out before the ship's power core failed, because if they didn't, the daybreak would become a very expensive tomb. The ship's laboratory hummed with activity as Green's sensors scanned Miller from head to toe. Data streams filled multiple screens, breaking down every component of human biology into its basic elements. Commander Blue moved between displays, 4 eyes darting rapidly over the information. There, Green's excited voice cut through the tension. Look at these readings. Humans produce a unique combination of compounds. But the most interesting one. The scientist highlighted a particular chemical formula on the main screen. Miller leaned forward, trying to make sense of the complex molecular structure. What is that? A derivative of lactic acid, Blue explained, skin patterns swirling with excitement. But it's not just regular lactic acid. Your bodies modify it somehow. And look at this. The commander brought up a side-by-side comparison, showing the parasite's reaction to different human biochemicals. The evidence was clear. When exposed to this particular compound, the energy-based parasites didn't just retreat. They broke down completely. That's why they avoid humans, Miller said, understanding dawning. We're literally toxic to them. A violent shudder ran through the ship, making everyone grab for support. The lights flickered ominously. Power core containment down to 60%, a computerized voice announced. Estimated time to critical failure, 2 hours, 17 minutes. Blue's skin patterns darkened with worry. We don't have enough time to synthesize this compound. Even with our technology, creating an exact replica of the human biological process would take days. Miller paced the laboratory, mind racing. The parasites were spreading through the ship's systems, but they avoided human contact. An idea struck him. Crazy, but they were running out of options. We don't need to synthesize it, he said, stopping mid-stride. We just need to distribute what we already have. He gestured to himself. Me? Green's eyes widened. You mean? I mean we use me as a walking parasite killer. Miller turned to Blue. Commander, do you have environmental suits for your crew? Yes, but why? Because I'm going to need to get very sweaty, and your people probably don't want to smell it. I need to access as many infected systems as possible. Every time I sweat, I'll be leaving traces of that compound behind. Blue's skin patterns shifted rapidly as they processed the idea. It could work, but the ship is huge, even if you ran through every corridor. Then we'll help it spread, Green interrupted, moving to an environmental control terminal that still functioned. We can adjust the air circulation systems, increase the temperature in sections where Inspector Miller goes. The heat will help him produce more of the compound, and the air systems will help distribute it. Another violent shudder ran through the ship. Power core containment at 50%, the computer announced. No time to debate, Miller said, already shrugging off his uniform jacket. Commander, get your crew into environmental suits. Green, start raising the temperature in sections I can safely reach. We'll start from here and work our way toward the power core. Blue moved to ship-wide communications. All crew, implement Emergency Protocol 7. Environmental suits required in all sections. Stand by for further instructions. As Miller prepared for his run through the ship, he caught his reflection in a darkened screen. What he was about to do would probably violate a dozen court regulations about maintaining professional appearance and dignity. But right now, dignity was a luxury they couldn't afford. Ready, he said, checking his equipment one last time. Green, make it hot. Blue, guide me through the quickest route to cover the most critical systems. The temperature in the laboratory began to rise. Miller could already feel the first beads of sweat forming on his forehead. On the walls, the parasitic energy patterns seemed to pulse more rapidly, as if sensing the coming threat. Inspector, Blue said quietly, if this works, you'll have saved more than just this ship. You'll have given us a weapon against an enemy we thought unbeatable. Miller managed a grim smile. Well then, Commander, let's go show these parasites why they should fear human body odor. Steam filled the corridors of the Daybreak as Miller sprinted through the superheated sections. His shirt clung to his body, soaked with sweat. Behind him, he could see the parasitic energy patterns recoiling from the trails of moisture he left behind. Power core containment at 40%, the ship's computer announced, its voice distorting slightly. Warning. Critical systems failing. Miller. Blue's voice crackled through his communicator. The parasites are converging on the core faster than we predicted. We need you to change course. Breathing heavily, Miller skidded to a stop at an intersection. Send me the new route. His handheld display updated, showing a path that would take him deeper into the ship's engineering sections. The temperature here was even higher, and emergency lights cast everything in a red glow. How's the distribution looking? He asked between breaths. Green's voice responded. The air circulation system is spreading your biological compounds through the ship. We're seeing parasite die-off in sections you haven't even visited yet. But it's not enough. Not fast enough. Another violent tremor shook the ship. Miller stumbled, catching himself against a wall. Where his hand touched the metal surface, he could see the parasitic energy patterns frantically retreating. Wait, he said, an idea forming. Green, are you seeing this? Direct contact seems more effective than airborne distribution. Yes. Green's excitement was clear even through the communicator. The concentration of the compound is higher in direct sweat contact. The parasites aren't just retreating, they're being destroyed completely. Miller was already moving again, but this time he ran with one hand trailing along the wall. Behind him, he left a clear path where the parasites had been eliminated. Commander, he called out, get your crew to do the same thing in other sections. Have them wipe down surfaces with any cloth I've touched. We need to spread this faster. Understood. But be careful near the core, Inspector. The parasites are densest there. They might. Blue's warning was cut off by a massive surge of energy that coursed through the corridor. Purple lightning crackled along the walls, and Miller felt his hair stand on end. They're evolving. Green's voice was panicked. The parasites near the core. They're combining into larger forms. Miller rounded a corner and stopped dead. Floating in the corridor ahead was a swirling mass of purple energy, larger than anything they'd seen before. It pulsed with malevolent intelligence, tendrils of energy reaching toward him. Miller, get out of there, Blue commanded. But Miller stood his ground. He watched as the energy tendrils approached, then recoiled from his sweat-soaked presence. The mass seemed to writhe in frustration, unable to approach. They can't touch me, he reported. No matter how big they get, they still can't stand human biochemistry. Power core containment at 25%, the computer warned. Critical failure imminent. Miller made a decision. He stripped off his soaked shirt and threw it directly into the energy mass. The reaction was immediate and violent. The purple energy creature writhed and fractured, breaking apart into smaller forms that quickly dissipated. Green, he shouted into his communicator. Get everyone to throw their sweat-soaked clothing into the core room. Now. The next few minutes were chaos. Crew members in environmental suits rushed to follow his instructions, tossing fabric that carried traces of his sweat through openings into the core chamber. Each piece caused cascading failures in the parasite swarms. Power core containment stabilizing, the computer announced. Parasite presence in critical systems reducing. Miller finally allowed himself to lean against a wall, exhausted. His muscles ached, and he was more dehydrated than he'd ever been in his life. Inspector, Blue's voice was filled with relief. You did it. The parasites are dying off throughout the ship. But as Miller watched the last traces of purple energy fade from the walls, something bothered him. These parasites had been too perfectly designed. Someone or something had created them to destroy advanced civilizations. Commander, he said grimly, I don't think this is over. We need to find out where these things came from. Because I have a feeling we just discovered someone's secret weapon. In the Daybreak's main laboratory, Miller stood before a group of alien scientists, his body finally cooled down and wearing a fresh uniform. The screens behind him displayed complex molecular structures, the breakdown of the human compound that had saved the ship. The parasites weren't just weapons, Miller explained, pointing to a particular data set. They were designed to evolve, to adapt to any technological defense, but their creators never expected to encounter human biology. Green worked rapidly at a nearby console, combining the data from their scans with the ship's advanced molecular synthesis technology. The compound your body produces isn't just toxic to them. It unravels their very structure. It's like finding out that the deadliest warrior in the galaxy can be defeated by a glass of water. Commander Blue's skin patterns showed intense concentration as they studied the results. But we still can't synthesize it perfectly. The artificial version lacks something. Maybe we're thinking about this wrong, Miller said, walking to the central workstation. Instead of trying to copy human biology exactly, what if we combined it with your technology? Create a hybrid solution. The laboratory fell silent as the implications sank in. Green's patterns shifted to bright silver, their equivalent of a eureka moment. Yes, we could use human samples as a base and enhance them with our molecular stabilizers. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Miller provided more samples while the alien scientists worked with their advanced equipment. They combined human biochemistry with their own technological innovations, testing each iteration against samples of the parasites they'd managed to contain. The first few attempts failed spectacularly. One test caused a small explosion that left Green's facial pattern smoking slightly. But by the seventh attempt, they saw something promising. Look! Green called everyone to their station. On the testing platform, they introduced their latest compound to a contained group of parasites. The purple energy forms didn't just die. They completely dissolved, faster than even direct human contact had managed. "We did it," Blue said softly, all four eyes fixed on the results. "We created something new. Not just human, not just alien technology, but both together." Miller watched as the scientists began producing the compound in larger quantities. "How long until we can protect other ships?" "Hours," Green replied, already working on the production sequence. "The beautiful part is, once we create the initial batch using human samples, we can replicate it perfectly. Every ship in the fleet can be protected." A thought struck Miller. "Commander, those parasites were stored somewhere before they got loose. Someone created them. Have you tracked where that artifact came from?" Blue's patterns darkened. "Yes, we traced it to an abandoned research station in the Outer Rim. The station's records were mostly destroyed. But what we found..." The commander paused. "There are more weapons like this out there. Different types, all waiting to be found. Or used. Then we need to be ready," Miller said firmly. "This compound isn't just a defense for your ship anymore. It's proof that our species can work together to solve problems neither of us could handle alone." Green looked up from their work. "Inspector, would you be willing to help us set up a permanent research station? We need to study how human biology might help against other weapons we might encounter." Miller smiled. "I'll have to clear it with the cores, but I think we just proved that human inspectors can do more than check maintenance logs." The ship's computer chimed softly, announcing that the first full batch of the hybrid compound was complete. Miller watched as maintenance drones began applying it to critical systems. Where it touched, the few remaining parasites simply ceased to exist. "You know," Blue said, their patterns showing amusement, "when I requested a human inspector, I never expected to end up creating a whole new field of biotechnological research." "That's the thing about humans," Miller replied, watching the compound do its work. "We tend to sweat the small stuff, but sometimes that's exactly what's needed." The joke took a moment to translate, but when it did, the entire laboratory filled with the musical tones of alien laughter. Together, they had turned a crisis into an opportunity, and Miller knew this was just the beginning. 1 month after the Daybreak incident, Miller stood before the Galactic Council chambers. The massive hall was filled with representatives from 100 different species, all gathered to hear his report. "The threat posed by these energy parasites was greater than we initially realized," Miller said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "They weren't just weapons. They were part of a larger arsenal, designed to bring down advanced civilizations. But in finding their weakness, we discovered something more important: the power of combining different species' strengths." The main display showed footage from the daybreak, demonstrating how the hybrid compound had worked. Several council members leaned forward, their various biological features showing intense interest. Commander Blue stood next to Miller, their skin patterns glowing with pride. Thanks to Inspector Miller and the human biological component, we've now protected over 300 ships. The research station we've established has already begun exploring other applications of human biochemistry combined with our technology. And what of the origin of these weapons? Asked one of the council members, their crystalline form shifting colors as they spoke. Miller touched his control panel, bringing up a star map. We've identified 3 more abandoned research stations in the Outer Rim. All of them contain similar weapons, each designed to target different aspects of advanced technology. But now we have something they never planned for: cooperation between species. The council chamber buzzed with discussion. Miller could see some members still looked skeptical, while others showed clear signs of support. We propose, Blue continued, the establishment of a permanent joint species research initiative. Not just humans and my people, but all council races. Each species has unique biological and technological advantages. Together, we could be prepared for any threat. The council's head speaker raised their appendage for silence. This is an unprecedented proposal. Never before have we considered combining biological attributes across species for defensive purposes. With respect, Miller said, stepping forward, we never had to before. But these weapons prove that somewhere out there, someone is preparing for war on a scale we've never seen. We can either face it alone or stand together. The chamber fell silent as the council members communicated privately through their neural links. Miller waited, remembering how just a month ago he'd been doing routine inspections. Now he stood at the cusp of changing galactic society forever. Finally, the head speaker rose. The council has reached a decision. The Joint Species Research Initiative is approved. Commander Blue will oversee the technological aspects, while Inspector Miller will serve as the human liaison and lead biological consultant. Applause erupted in various forms, some clapping, others creating light displays or emitting harmonic tones. Miller felt Blue's hand on his shoulder, their skin patterns showing pure joy. There's one more thing, Miller said once the chamber quieted. We need to find who created these weapons, not for revenge, but because anyone capable of making such things might have more waiting to be used. We need to be ready. Agreed, the head speaker announced. A joint task force will be assembled to investigate the origin of these weapons. But for now, let us celebrate what you've shown us, that our differences aren't weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be combined. As the formal session ended, Miller found himself surrounded by representatives from various species, all eager to discuss how their biological attributes might contribute to new defensive technologies. Did you ever think, Blue asked quietly during a brief lull, that your routine inspection would lead to all this? Miller watched as humans and aliens mingled freely in the chamber, already forming research teams and sharing ideas. Honestly, I was just trying to keep your ship from exploding. But this, he gestured at the scene before them, this is better than anything I could have imagined. Indeed, Blue's patterns shifted to a deep, satisfied blue. You humans have a saying, don't you? About good things coming from small beginnings. From small things, great things grow, Miller corrected with a smile. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning. Above them, the galactic map glowed with newly marked research stations and collaboration points, a testament to how one small inspection had changed the course of galactic history.